Season's greetings. I'm Claremont Featherstone inviting you to Security Focus. Recently, Italian and international law enforcement, assisted by police personnel far and wide, arrested in excess of 100 persons connected with what is described as the largest cocaine underworld bust in modern history. It was mentioned also that while those activities have far reaching ramifications, we in Guyana could expect to see some arrests of some of our countrymen. So I've done some background work on this criminal group or criminal enterprise to see exactly how it links with Guyana. This group is not, for starters, the Italian mafia, Cosa Nostra. This is not the Italian mafia. This is a rural base criminal enterprise in Drangheta, which is a mafia type base enterprise. Not the same as a mafia group where you have kinship connection. This is one with what is called fraternal ties. So essentially, it is a gang more than a mafioso organization. But they are very, very wealthy. And analysts internationally have said that they have wealth that amounts to between 3 and 5% of GDP of the Italian state. And only a few years ago, they saw about $55 billion. They were worth that much money. But these criminal groups often have what is called reciprocal arrangements with other criminal groups. And that is what has special implications for Guyana. So now let us factor in some of these special implications for Guyana. The first one, we are told, is that 144 telephones were bugged, technical surveillance. And we are told that 14 of those phones were in Guyana. First implication. It says 14 in Guyana, the birth country of the wife of Sicilian mobster Salvatore Anastasio, better known as Lazio. So that this is saying to me that one of these mobsters, somebody who's highly placed in the hierarchy, is married to a Guyanese woman. That we must know. There is another thing we should know. This organization has and maintains a close relationship with the Italian mafia, the Sicilian mafia. They share space and they do work with the Sicilian mafia. But in addition to that, they have another reciprocal agreement with a group that was started in America by persons who left El Salvador and Guatemala and several of those countries during the 1980s. And that criminal group, Mara Salvatrucha, MS-13. This MS-13 runs neck and neck in terms of brutality with the Italian organization that I spoke about earlier. The Italian organization has a relationship with MS-13. MS-13 has a leader who also is married to a Guyanese and who has frequented our country. But it doesn't end there. We have some more work to do. MS-13, or La Mara Salvatrucha, as the name implies, has special implications because M has some symbolism for the group. The M represents Mexico. The S represents where they came from, San Salvador. The 13 represent the M as being the 13th letter in the alphabet. This M13 means that Mara Salvatrucha has a reciprocal arrangement with the Mexican mafia. So this is the thing. Guyanese people, business people, and youngsters who mix up with gangs could find themselves in all sorts of hot water without knowing that these gangs have other criminal relationship with other gangs in other parts of the world. So that the business persons that are being mentioned, whoever they are, connected with the Italian mobsters, by extension, are connected or are serving some purpose of the Sicilian mafia without knowing, of course, are serving a purpose of MS-13 without knowing, and are also serving the purpose of the Mexican mafia without knowing. When I come back, I will deal with some more information related to international criminal enterprise and their implications for Guyana. Please stay tuned. Security Focus is brought to you by Regium International, Northwest Investment Inc., Intelligard Specialist Security Services, and the Institute of Security and Public Safety. Welcome back. Several years ago, an elderly friend of mine called me to his home, and he said there is something troubling going on in his house. He was living there with a granddaughter who used to cook and assist him in many ways. And he said that she brought 2 suitcases into his home and placed them under her bed. And he said, while lying in the room next door, after a while, the scent of new money permeated his room. And after a day or two, he became suspicious, particularly because of how she was behaving and the fact that, consistent with that, several calls were coming to their phones, and when he would pick one up and answer, the person at the other end would be speaking in Spanish. Over time, he became more and more afraid, and then discovered that at a certain time every month, 2 men would come and bring a bag to the niece, to the granddaughter. And he looked at it for a while and then discovered that somewhere along the line, the bags would disappear. Granddaughter worked nowhere at the time. He did some tracing and discovered that the bag with the money was sent to a niece or great niece, something of the sort, young relative, who had a job in a local bank and decided once when the bags came into his home that he would call me. So he did so. He pushed his hands in a little area and you could feel sharp edges of notes, and there was lots of money stocked in this bag. And over time, he realized that it was counterfeit Guyana currency that was being laundered through the banking system in Guyana by this relative. So by then, he became very afraid, took it up with her, and called a friend who lived a little distance away from him, 6-7 houses, who was by then preparing to leave the police force as an assistant commissioner. Commissioner came over, had a discussion. I knew the fellow as well since I was a child. Came over, had a discussion, and advised him to have a talk with his granddaughter so that she could get out of this thing while she still had the time. And as we were doing our investigations, we discovered that she was seeing a gentleman that was connected with MS-13. For those of you who want a better understanding of MS-13, because they're here, they have representatives here, you could go to the internet and type in Samuel Logan, MS-13. Logan is a sort of foreign agent of mine, and he gets me jobs internationally from time to time. And he is an international journalist, investigative reporter, qualified in international relations and diplomacy. And many of the US diplomats who were posted around these parts, he would conduct training for them on a regular basis. So he did some work, some research work on MS-13, and he wrote a book which I'm told is being used to be developed into a mafia type movie, so that you can get a lot more on the group by just visiting the internet. But I do know that lots of money, counterfeit money, has been filtered or laundered through commercial banks in Guyana. And hearsay, I have known for quite some time of cases where you go to the bank to draw a check or to do some business, and you leave the bank with 9 counterfeit $1,000 notes. I figure Guyanese have had this sort of thing happen to them time in, time out. But I know that whenever someone reported that experience to me, they called the name of one bank. Only one bank, one bank. So if I received reports on 10 or 15 occasions about a man going to the bank, presented a check, collected $150,000, and when he reached back to his office, he discovered he had 9,000 counterfeit notes. One bank, one single bank in Georgetown. So we have to pay keen attention as a people to how foreign gangs are infiltrating our country, can infiltrate our banking system, and the like. But as we go in to the festivities, I have a few other words of advice. We have heard that 2 commercial banks are on their way out, and that spells uncertainty for us from here on until our government finds a way to stabilize what is to come. And so those of us, most of our countrymen are poor, and I think we need to be mindful of how we are spending our funds foremost. We should also try not to buy things in excess, things that we do not wish, because that would entail working with larger amounts of money and thereby playing in to the hands of criminals. Only this week, I received reports from two particular friends in the Charlotte Street area who told me that there were 3 robberies last week, this Sunday gone. 3 robberies in Charlotte Street between Cummins Street and Lights Street, closer to the junction of Charlotte and Light Street. 3 robberies, including, I am told, an armed robbery. One area, hotspot, 3 robberies, one day. And so we must take these things into consideration. We must also take into consideration the fact that we are going to need our money for the new year. And since these banks are going to be no more, we do not know that the other banks who will have a greater monopoly on the country and the economy, we do not know that we will walk into the bank and get a loan. You never did get it easy, but you do not know for sure that you could go there come next year and get a $200,000 loan easier. So what we need to do from this juncture, we need to go back to basic. We need to go and look at our thrift organizations, and particularly those of us in the Black community, the African community. We need to go back to basics. We need to go back to our thrift, the school thrift. The very school thrift that President Desmond Hoyt threatened to jail the teachers in 1988 for the children's money, that very thrift. We need to go back to that and to strengthen that. We need to strengthen the piggy bank at school, the piggy bank at work, the piggy bank every place. We need to ensure that our trade union groups are strong and those grassroots financial entities are made strong. We really need to revisit them so that in the end, we know that there is a way out of this situation should the new commercial order not work in our favor. When we come back, I shall conclude with a few more tips. Please stay tuned. Security Focus is brought to you by Regium International, Northwest Investment Inc., Intelligard Specialist Security Services, and the Institute of Security and Public Safety. Welcome back. Those of us who have worked perhaps in law enforcement or education would know that we in Guyana have had more than our fair share of gang activities. We've had situations in schools where youngsters in schools brought to school everything possibly under the sun. And we have had situations where youngsters got themselves into trouble. And when the teacher gave them a note and say, go and bring your parents, they went off and brought a senior gang member who came to the school and pretended to be a parent or a guardian. And when the teachers found out or pressure was brought to bear, near violence erupted. And in cases, violence did erupt. We have to be mindful, therefore, of how we supervise our youngsters and the manner in which we keep an eye and even speak to them. Because I recall during the Roger Khan years, we did not understand gang activity to the extent that many of those kingpins, particularly Roger, he was very smart and he had front businesses far and wide. And so you could go here and you see one being run by a Portuguese family, another by an Indian family, another by an Amerindian family, another by African family. And we have had businesses in Guyana that were run for 20 years, 15 years, almost 25 years. And only recently, even the family members of these people realized that their businesses were only fronts for organized crime. Some of them, their relatives, did criticize their association, and they went back to their gangs, and their gangs came and bludgeon, beat, kill mother, beat father, throw siblings down steps. And that was the gang's way of saying, you do not mess with us. You do not criticize us. So I believe this is as good a time for us to pay some attention to not only our friends. I have some relatives who have just come back from the States, and they say to me, we ain't going by nobody's house, because we don't know who dealing with what. And I ain't driving a nobody car Wild West because I don't want to be the victim of a drive-by, or I don't want the police to stop us and find unlicensed guns and contraband and drugs. And we have that going for us. And so as we take time for festivities, particularly our young folks, they need to understand that they should not drink and drive. They need to understand that they need to stay away from the marijuana and the cocaine and the other banned drugs, the prohibited drugs, the ecstasy, and the whole lineup of them, particularly those who are riding motorcycles and driving. And they need, of course, to know that if they are going out with friends, the parents and guardians must advise them. If they're going out with friends, you need to at least get an understanding of where they're going and who they are going with, because there's a new thing in Guyana. When they go out with friends and they do not know several of the persons they meet there, then the drinking starts and the smoking starts. Somebody passes you a glass and the glass has an ecstasy in it. You drink the ecstasy, and then the next thing you know, next week, you see yourself on some video as a young woman in bed with another woman. That's the new crave in Guyana, and I've seen quite a few of those videos. So you have to be very, very mindful at this period of year that you use moderation in everything that you do. Driving, drinking, and especially spending, so that we could all be here for the new year. Having said that much, I would like to report on a little matter that I had reported on some time ago, a few weeks, and it had to do with a nice young man who had befriended me about a year or two ago, and did mention to me that he was ill and wanted some advice on how to go about having a liver transplant. I did mention that he went to India and was scheduled to undergo surgery to that end. He did so almost a month ago. He is looking splendid, preparing to return to join us all sometime soon, and also to continue his studies. So for me, in fact, he's born the same day I'm born, the 6th of December. So he had the best birthday one could ever get, having suffered for about 15 years with this condition. And so I'm very, very happy for him. He could have been my son, and I think his friends out there, they would be very happy to know that he's doing so well, and he's going to be a part of our fold very soon in the new year. It was indeed a pleasure being with you this evening. I am Claremont Featherstone, wishing you an enjoyable rest of the evening. Season's greetings to one and all. Thanks for watching.